The other day, my sister and I were talking about elementary school teachers. If any of you guys are like not American, elementary is basically like primary school. And we had the same second grade teacher. So I'm 2 years older than my sister. So I was in second grade, and then, I went on to the next grade and the grade after that. And then once she got in second grade, she ended up having the same teacher I had. And so there was like a difference between my sister and I at the time, where I was like, uh, I guess like a hard working student. I was smart, attentive. I'm not trying to gas myself up, but I'm just saying, like, I was smart, attentive. I did all my work. I was quiet. I was very quiet, and I didn't really cause any trouble, right? And once my sister got into that class, she was the complete opposite. She would talk all the time. She wouldn't do her work on time, or she wouldn't get as good as grades. She would always kind of be on the teacher's bad side and things like that. And she would always get in trouble. And my mom, my parents, they would know this stuff because, of course, the teachers would report, to the parents. And my sister would tell me how the teacher would always be like, oh, your brother did this so well, your brother did that so well, your brother was always quiet, your brother always performed well, your brother always got good grades, your brother this, your brother that, your brother, whatever, right? And my sister was telling me how she would never say this out loud, but she would always think to herself, like, well, I'm not my brother. I'm not my brother. I'm not my brother. Do I look like my brother? Do I sound like my brother? Things like that, right? And it's just kind of interesting how, there's just that expectation put onto my sister, because I guess I set some type of goal, or I set some type of standard, assuming that just because my sister and I are siblings, that we would end up just kind of being the same person or something like that, right? It's like the teacher completely disregarded that siblings can 100% be completely different from each other. That happens all the time. Always. Siblings are always completely different from each other, right? Especially if it's like a boy and a girl sibling. So it's just the way she had an expectation of assuming that my sister was going to be as well performing as me, or just similar to me. So just imagine if the roles were reversed, right? Let's say my sister was older than me and she had that teacher first and she acted a fool, and then I came in and then she expected me to act a fool. Will she just start to kind of be what I have already been on her bad side going in? What I have already been, like, in her mind, like, that teacher that's definitely gonna, not a teacher but a student that's definitely going to cut up and act up because my sister did the 2 years before. That's very, that's just a very like limiting belief to just put on kids, right? That's just, I don't think people should do that. You should look at people as if they're a new complete person, new complete experience, right? Even when that is with little children. And so when my sister was telling me this, she was saying that because, like, to her, at least to what it felt like, because that teacher expected her to perform as well as I did, and the fact that my sister wasn't, the fact that she was like, just kind of not at all similar to me whatsoever, it seemed as if like the teacher would always get on her. The Like most of the ridicule and most of like just negative whatever would be more focused onto my sister, purely because she had a sibling that was in her class before that performed so well. So it was like she was really just trying to push that expectation onto my sister, that, like, hey, in my head, that you're supposed to be like a high performing student, you're supposed to be a well behaved student, things like that, right? And that's just things like that you definitely shouldn't put on children, right? 100%, like, especially as they're growing and developing, because that can really get to them, and that can just they can just carry that their entire lives, kind of getting into like this type of, especially with siblings, right? Getting into some type of sibling rivalry, or making them feel less because they're not doing as well as other students. Like, and just in general, the school system, the way it's set up is definitely not for everybody. It's definitely not for people who don't do well when it comes to just like blind obedience. But that's not the point of this. The point is expectations, right? Just expectations in general. Maybe you have expectations from family members, from school, from, other like leading figures or adult figures in your life, maybe even expectations from yourself. And sometimes these expectations, they can lead us astray from our own true paths, from what we actually want to do. These expectations can kind of, they're not really our thoughts, right? Like a lot of the times, our parents expect us to go to school and graduate and like get a degree in whatever, right? Maybe our teachers expect us to follow this exact plan and rubric and do things the way that they want us to do, right? Maybe even our job places have expectations. Many places are going to have expectations, but a lot of expectations that we have just predestined on us, that were just put on us without us even thinking about it, for the most part, are what other people want from us, not what we want from ourselves, right? And so that can lead to us really becoming more estranged with our own goals, our own identity, even because you feel that, whatever your parents pushed on you, or whatever your mother or whatever a teacher pushed on you, now you feel like, okay, you have to do that. You have to live up to that. And throughout that whole process, you're miserable because it's not aligned with, what you might feel like your purpose is, right? And so we're not taught to think for ourselves. We're taught to think what others want us to do. And when it comes to that, you can lead your entire life, right? Just not knowing what it is that you want to do, especially once you kind of realize that, hey, like, I do not want to do what it is that, like, let's say my parents have set up for me or that my teachers have set up for me, things like that. Especially when you just know that there's something that you're incredibly passionate about that you want to pursue, but it's not within the expectations of, maybe the world that you're surrounded by, right? Like maybe you want to be a musician, but your parents want you to be like some type of scientist or like some type of elite sports athlete, things like that. But you just have a burning passion to create music and write music and things like that. But your parents are just like, no, right? And imagine all the people who maybe not even, they might have not even been able to find out what it is that they are passionate about, because they are so caught up in others people's expectations and what other people want from them. It can take a lifetime. It can literally take people their entire lives to figure out, this is actually what I want to do. This is what I felt like I was born for. This is what I felt like I was put on this earth for. And that could be anything. That could be anything from any type of artistic or creative career, or any type of athletic endeavors, any type of, like, let's say scientific or research, mathematics or whatever, right? Even just maybe niche little things. Maybe you just like to create buttons, right? You like to create buttons for shirts, for pants, for shoes, whatever, for socks, I don't know. And that's just like what you're incredibly passionate about, and you're like the button guy. But imagine if you would have never found this out, because your parents or your grandparents or just the adults that were in your life that made a big impact on you said that you had to be like some type of entrepreneur, businessman that owns like a tech company or something like that. And now you're chasing something that isn't yours. You're chasing something that is someone else's dream, right? Because you were raised up with these expectations that, hey, you're going to do this and you're gonna live the life that I want you to live, not the life that you want to live. You're gonna live that I want you to have, because, let's say maybe those people in your life, they didn't have, the ability to get into that, right? Like how, let's say a dad that will urge his son to do sports, things like that, because he really wanted to get to be good in sports, but he never did in high school or whatever. So now he's like trying to push his son to be like some type of super athlete. Or mothers who try and push their daughters to be like models, so they take them to like beauty pageants or put them in dance class or whatever the case may be, right? Because that's a life that they wanted to live, and they're trying to vicariously live through their own children's lives, which is, again, like, that's something you should never put on a kid, right? Like, if there's one thing that I feel like is a plague to a child's development, at least a development when it comes to their own self-discovery, is putting, someone else's expectations onto them, right? Not expectations that maybe they develop on their own. Like, let's say a kid, he becomes really into martial arts and he practices kicks every day, right? Things like that. And he, maybe, let's say his favorite martial artist, they have an expectation of, oh, you should be able to do this for cardio and you should practice 100 kicks a day or something like that, right? So now that kid has made his own expectations through whatever influencer that he found, and now he's benefiting, because he's into martial arts and he's setting those expectations specifically for martial arts. And but like that same kid could have easily been practicing, like, I don't know, cooking, right? They could have been becoming a professional chef because their parents really wanted them to be a professional chef, because his dad was like slightly into cooking when he was like 14, and he never really lived that dream of being a professional chef. So now he's making his son be a professional chef, right? And now that's leading that kid completely astray from whatever his mission might be in his life, whatever it is that he wants to pursue that makes him feel alive, right? And that's what expectations can do. Now, I'm not saying expectations are bad, but I'm just saying, with all the examples that I've given, I said expectations like 50 million times in this video, but all the examples that I've given where expectations are put onto people, they're put onto people when they're young, and it's almost like a brainwashing, right? It's almost like, hey, you, new human being into this earth, I expect you to do this, this, and that. Something that, it, you know, that is completely foreign to you because you were only just brought into this world that you can't even fully process yet. And then now you're growing up with that. Now you're growing up with something that was just immediately put into your face, like basically all of a sudden, right? And then now you have to keep up with it for your entire life, possibly either to avoid judgment, to avoid, let's say, relationships falling apart, whether that be with familial or like friends and whatnot. And so that I feel like that just, again, it just leads people to not to ultimately pursue something that isn't theirs, and then at the end of it not feel fulfilled in their lives, and not know what it is that they want to do, right? They could have went through their entire lives doing, pursuing someone else's dream and not theirs. And honestly, that's sad, right? And hopefully you guys know what you guys want to do. See you guys in the next one.